Hey everybody, this is my thoughts on the Elder Scrolls V Dawnguard and Hearthfire. These are the DLCs that I have for it, and they were sent to me by Lex, so thank you for that. It is greatly appreciated. Before you ask, no, I'm not going to do anything on Dragonborn. I don't have it, I'm not going to get it, and even if somebody sends it to me, I'm not going to do anything on it. Because I am that sick of Skyrim. Okay? End of story. So don't ask about Dragonborn. It's not going to happen. Anyway. What are these DLCs? Well, they are two different things entirely. For one, Hearthfire is a $5 DLC, whereas Dawnguard is a $20 DLC. And they have different aims. For one, Hearthfire is entirely about homesteading, whereas Dawnguard is a full quest line. So, let's start with Hearthfire, because there's not much to talk about here at all. Basically, all you do in Hearthfire is build houses. You get access to plots of land in certain holdings, if you are, of course, the Thane. And what ends up happening there is that you get these plots of land, you can buy the plots of land, then you can buy materials like wood or stone in order to actually build the house. And you can choose the layout by selecting a template. And of course, you start out with just a basic house, and then you can expand upon that and add in different wings, and these wings have different choices available to them, but ultimately it's all going to be the same basic style of house. And while you can change what's in a specific wing, the choices are only between 3 different items. So there's not really a lot you can do as far as customization of the house goes. I mean, it does give you plenty of places to put your loot and everything, but that's really it. You can buy animals to just wander around your plot of land, and you can hire a minstrel and just kind of sit there and do nothing the entire time. But that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just a house. It's pretty much nothing that mods haven't already done, only they're charging you $5 for it. So, Hearthfire right off the bat is just not worth buying. Just don't bother with it. It's extreme tedium, because all you're doing with that is getting tons and tons of resources and carrying them around from point A to point B and using them to build things. It's not interesting at all. Dawnguard, on the other hand, is a full quest line related to vampires. And as far as new content goes, it brings back Oriel's bow. In fact, that's a major part of the quest line. And what you're seeing in the video is actually the ending to the Dawnguard campaign. So, I mean, you saw the warning at the beginning of the video saying, hey, this contains a lot of spoilers. But basically, the game gives you a choice. The Dawnguard DLC gives you a choice between joining the vampire clan Volokar or joining the Dawnguard. And if you join the vampires, you get access to the Vampire Lord skill tree, basically. Well, perk tree, actually. And it also adds in the perk tree for lycanthropy, by the way. Now, the thing about a Vampire Lord is that they're actually not really that great. They don't really have all that many great bonuses to them, and of course they're vampires, so they're very vulnerable to the sun. But they completely butchered the lore as far as that goes, because if you remember in my Skyrim review, I mentioned that in this particular thing, even if you're a werewolf, you can still become a Vampire Lord. And that made no sense from a lore standpoint at all, because not only do people hate both werewolves and vampires and werewolves hate each other. And so, why in the hell would a Vampire Lord ever bestow the gift of vampirism on a mangy cur werewolf? Why wouldn't he just, slaughter the werewolf right on the spot? It doesn't make any sense. Even worse is that the werewolves themselves are immune to disease. How the hell do they contract vampirism? It doesn't make any sense. From a lore standpoint at all. It just makes no sense. Even from a gameplay standpoint, it makes no sense. Because, again, you're immune to disease as a werewolf, yet you can become a Vampire Lord instead. So if you wanted to cure your lycanthropy, then of course you can become a Vampire Lord, and that cures your lycanthropy. Then you can go through the process of curing yourself of vampirism, which the Dawnguard DLC gives you as well. it gives you so many easy outs. It's just ridiculous. And the quest line itself is nothing more than a few dungeon crawls. Like everything else in Skyrim. It's just a bunch of dungeon crawling. You just run around and you whack stuff in the face. Particularly a lot of Falmer. And bugs. A lot of bugs and Falmer. That's about it. And, it's just not an interesting DLC. You'd think that fighting vampires would be interesting. You'd think that bringing back crossbows would be interesting. But it's not. It's such a lackluster DLC that there's no characters that you care about at all. Except maybe Serana if you're feeling generous for the game. Because she's the follower that you get in this. And she's a vampire. And they kinda, sorta tried to put some effort into putting some character into this character, but they failed pretty miserably at it because nobody really cares about the characters in Skyrim. So, even then, the character's pretty one-dimensional for the most part. It's like, oh, well, I just gotta do this. Okay, whatever. And, the plot line to Dawnguard is just ridiculous in general, so it ends up just not being worth it at all. And Oriel's Bow artifact it was really interesting in the previous games because it was just so ridiculously powerful. And in this one, it's not that great. Like every other artifact in the game, it's not that great. Its one special power is that you can shoot sun-hallowed arrows or blood-cursed arrows into the sun in order to have different effects. The sun-hallowed arrows make the sun flare up and basically smite things, and the blood-cursed arrows basically make it so that if you're a vampire, you get bonuses of the sun not being out. That's about it. And there's not really much to speak of as far as the new content goes. I mean, it's all outclassed by stuff you had in the game anyway, although it does allow you to make Dragonbone weaponry, and that's way more powerful than Daedric. So, feel free to break the game even more. But at any rate, Dawnguard is just not an impressive DLC at all. It still treats you like an idiot, still drags you everywhere with the quest markers and everything. It still makes way too many assumptions. The quest design in it is extremely linear. The dungeons themselves are extremely boring. The decision of joining the Vampire Clan or the Dawnguard is just an arbitrary choice. You're still basically going through the exact same quests and everything, just for different factions, and ultimately it doesn't have any effect in the world around you at all. The only real effect you get from joining Volokar is that you get to go to Castle Volokar and have just feeding frenzy. That's about it. It's not impressive at all, and it's just, at this point, when I went through the Dawnguard DLC, I was just like, when's it gonna be over? Because it's feels like it takes way longer than it actually does. It's not a very long DLC, but it feels like it takes a really long time because it's just so tedious. Anyway, that was my thoughts on Dawnguard and Hearthfire. If you want it in a nutshell, I don't think you should get them. They're just not fun DLCs, and they're not interesting, and they don't really do anything to add to the game very well. So there you go, folks. Thanks for watching.